met them where I wanted it to meet them, I think. And then everyone's had sort of their own slant on that, which is what I wanted as well. So it's very much you're personalizing it and taking the information in rather than it just being an academic intellectual exercise. And that's the whole thing with all of this work. It's supposed to hit you at that level so that we get that level of change and shift for people. So I thought what I would do this morning, and I'm just going to see if this is the best way to do this course, given the information that people have sent through for the last few days, is just to pick up threads of what people have been talking about. I've got a chat here, so I'll keep an eye on it, and if you have something that really clicks for you while I'm talking, just pop it in the chat and I will do my best to engage with it. And I'll get better at that as we go along too. So we'll get a flow with all of us. And I hope I'm interesting at 7 o'clock in the morning. So yeah. All right. Who did I want to read first? This is the one, excuse me for looking off screen for a minute. This is from Tracy, who's given me permission to read it, but I really liked it. And you'll see why when I read it. Hi, Holly. After completing the first module, I found it a little confronting that I recognized in myself traces of some of the archaic attitudes and ways of working with my son who has autism. Sorry, I cry all the time, can't help it. We have tried a variety of therapies over the past 17 years, and I realized that there was a strong inference of an assumption of inferiority and deficit. This was compounded with the ever-present stigma and shame. It's 7 in the morning, not very good at controlling myself. This issue is so big, and so we can talk about it intellectually, but I'm highly empathetic, which is why I do this work. The way that so Tracy, thanks for this. I will read the whole thing out. The way that impacts other people is so big, and I think unless we really go through it at a feeling level, we can't make any difference to the people we're with. So I loved this email. It's really cool. Let me keep going. That there was a strong inference of an assumption of inferiority and deficit. This was compounded with the ever-present stigma of shame that my mother so willingly introduced and maintained for so many years. So I'm grateful for this awareness and the opportunity to embrace and learn a new understanding and respect for my son. I am looking forward to making a clean, easy space for both of us to settle into. So yippee, because that's what I'm after. And so what I wanted to do with this module is make a space of no blame, because when you're in a shame state, when you're in a blame state, when you're in an angry state, and we'll learn this with the brain plasticity module as well, but it, you can't learn anything new. You're disconnected from your heart, and you're in a defense mode. And so while it's very right that, in lots of ways, the larger autistic community have been hyper vigilant about this issue because it needed that advancement, and it still does. It's, there's a long way to go. There has to be pockets, and that's what I can provide, of where we can have some solace so people can actually upgrade what they know, and they can't if they're defending and they're exhausted as well. So I really, really liked that perspective, and other people have sent similar things as well, where it's this has illuminated this for them. And then all we're really trying to do is make a nice space for people to be in. That's all we're actually trying to do, because we get so far when we do that. And we will learn all the way through this course that provides more than, I know you're going to go here, we're going to do this, we're going to teach you how to tie your shoelaces. The level of efficacy and warmth and safety that you provide for people makes an enormous difference to how they cope and thrive in the world. Joe said something about implicit bias. And I think it's the same thing again, where, I said it in the module, if we don't focus on this properly, you don't catch it. You honestly, you don't catch it because it's so subtle, and it's sticky, and it's stuck in all of our implicit understanding of ourselves. And so someone wrote this morning something about having to be I can't remember what her language was, but not vigilant. It wasn't a vigilant word, but it was, I guess, having a constant awareness of her thoughts about this, just to watch them, because they'll click in, and you're going down a road, and the kinder you are to yourself with that, you give yourself an opportunity to be more open, learn something new, be nice to yourself that you didn't get it right before. Because honestly, if you look at that history model, you should understand there's no way you would have got it right without other education, and not everyone's had access to that. We just haven't had access to it. And you go to the professionals, and for a long time, and they also are part of this warmth and inclusivity. That's what everyone's been educated to. And so if we want true change, we have to go through this process of witnessing it with love to the best of your ability. Because if you're someone who's been highly traumatized for this issue, you might not be able to do that very well. And then, if we take Porges' view of safety, we have to look at it as a community safety. How do we make people safe? How do we make people safe so we can grow? So we have to come out of a model. And I do think the autism community in some ways, in pockets, gets stuck in this of the old war model, and the old, we have to beat this thing into submission model, which it ends up not being very inclusive, and it ends up not being very kind. But you actually don't get a lot of change. I do think you have to knock at the door, and that's what that's been doing. But I think for that real efficacy, there has to be a softening, and we try and promote that to the best of our ability. Someone was talking slightly differently, but I think it fits in here, and it's really complicated for 7 a.m. So good luck to me even replying to it, but it fits in here. So there is so much history to unpack when it comes to evolution of the human condition. I'm curious about what the long-term ramifications are when a certain percentage of the population suffers a collective trauma. Blacks, Jews, veteran prisoners of war, 9/11, first responders, and participants of the eugenics programs, of which there are a large number, but that's what I said, her is just to name a few, Rebecca. May we learn to self-identify according to the trauma they suffered and coalesce around it, and loosely or formally forming a community. I'm so sorry I interrupted that in the middle. First participants in the eugenics programs may learn to self-identify according to the trauma they suffered and coalesce around it, and loosely or formally forming community. My question is, do you believe that holding onto these identities helps the process of traumatized individuals, or just perpetuate the memories and pain in the collective unconscious? In other words, is it necessary for humans to identify with their condition and say, yes, that's me, I belong in this group, for them to heal whatever trauma was suffered and move forward in a meaningful way on a physiological level? Or is it possible for an introvert, someone on the spectrum, or someone who just doesn't identify with the idea of victimhood to claw their way out of the muck on their own? I thought that was a vastly interesting thing to ask. I'm going to have a quick sip of my tea before I answer it. So no, we don't specifically focus on trauma in this course. I know a lot about it. I do work with people with trauma. And I really like the work of Gabor Mate, for example. And so I think there's lots of aspects to this. And so, yes, the whole community has to change. Do you have to identify with that community in order to dislocate it? Probably not as much as you think. I think that there are communities that highlight this and are affected in, various ways with trauma, make it visible. but it's not everyone's place to come and jump in and be a group oriented person if you're not. And so it's really complicated. It's a really good question. No, in essence, no, I don't think you have to join a group collective in order to heal. That's my bottom line answer. I think you can witness it, you can glean from it, but I don't think you have to identify. And within the autism community, a lot of people sit back and do their own thinking. They don't identify with the main bulk of thought processes. And in a sense, there really isn't one. It just looks like it. There's a massive variation in appreciation of this, aspect of the world. So I think on a physiological level, you actually have to do the work yourself. It's your body that's responding to all of this. It can't be in no context. We don't live in a vacuum, and it's happened in an environment. So, we're always having to weave in and out of what that means, because our bodies are impacted all of the time by our environment. We don't live all by ourselves. You can feel like that when you're, in a certain space, and you can feel like that all the time, and it's fine. But at a literal physiological level, we are being impacted all the time. And so it can be a really slow process to extricate your body from all of that learning and all of that way of being. But I don't know that you actually need to identify strongly. I do think groups think that you have to, and I think there's a rhetoric there. That unless you're with us, you're against us. Unless you're with us, you don't understand. You can see from my work, I don't subscribe to that. So other people do. My position isn't that. Because from a physiological point of view at base, you don't get any change when you're in that mode. And all of our states, this is my squiggly picture that I'll keep bringing up, immobilized. All of these states are useful. We just employ them as we need them. And so being in a forceful defensive state in this topic is just fine sometimes, whether that's a personal or a collective thing as well. Does anyone have any comments on that before we move on? Okay, but you don't have to. I just thought I'd slow down for a minute and let you catch up and see where you are. So Catherine said, and this is following nicely on, where is it? Oh. Okay. Earlier, I wrote down what you said about graciously saying thank you and moving forward. This certainly resonated with me. I have found myself having to revisit that a few times. There is a big part of me that wants to say, can we please wipe the slate clean here? Can we remove all that we have been taught through history about autism and start over? As much of some of it is the basic learning blocks of when we began to recognize it, what they saw, etc. It seems that after even all these years, it continues to get in the way of progress and seeing autism in the amazing ways it should be. And again, it's a really good point. And then Fee replied to this, which I haven't got up necessarily, so I'll go there. But I think it's maybe the goal is to have it all wiped clean, but I think it's impossible. And I from what I understand about trauma and healing trauma, really the only way is to go through it and witness it, because otherwise it comes and bites you when you're not looking. So there's a way in which we're washing it so it's clean. You can't, at this point in history, wish your dirty laundry clean, and pretend it's not there. You have to clean it, and then it's clean, and then it's transformed. And so I think it's a bit like that with this stuff, where it would be lovely if it all wasn't true, but it is true. And most of us don't understand it's true because we don't get confronted by it. And it's so embedded in our culture. And so the history of eugenics is not understood, and it horrifies people. Like, I didn't put much in there. If you go looking, it's unless you already know, it's mind-blowing what our governments are prepared to do to maintain a cleanliness. And so and what this means, and it's horrifying. So I think it's a very appropriate desire to want to do that, but I don't think that we can. And again, it's that implicit bias. If you don't look at it, it will creep through your interactions with your clients, with your families, with yourself. You will talk to yourself like that. You will judge an interaction you've had in the environment like that, unless you re-educate your mind. And that's where the vigilance of the autism community has been really important, to keep highlighting it so that it doesn't just get swept under again. Because at a brain level, where we do so much, we base all of our daily operations on predictive models, and they're mostly unconscious, because they have to be, otherwise you'd have to work out how to walk forward and step up a step and go around a tree every time you did it. So your brain has all of these models at base levels and then very, very high order levels. And so a lot of the cultural stuff we just very rightly absorb when we're little, and we go run through that program. And it's not a conspiracy program or a matrix program. It is if you really want to go down the matrix road, it's fun, but they're just there because that's what the brain needs in order to have chunks of material to interface with. So if you don't look at it at a mind level and what your physiology is doing and catch it, it will repeat, and I think we're getting cleverer as human beings to witness our capacity to do that and learn to step out of it and, witness it, watch it, and not just be swept into it. It's a very, very natural way that we learn, and the way that we collectivize for safety. Porges' model is about safety, and safety isn't just about your own personal safety. Safety is about groups. All mammals worked out how to be in groups because they keep themselves safe. And so the pull of the group, you do environmental psychology, it's really fascinating, but the pull of the group is like strong, and it's wired into you down to your toenails, and you don't understand that. It's really good to start looking at it. You start having to be a bit of a Jedi master to do stuff like that. It's worth your time. It's usually something you'll do if you've been traumatized in some fashion, because you will get disassociated and look outside in. And so, the Buddhists, this is off track but kind of fun, the Buddhists say, people are very fortunate if they've had something bad happen to them, because they get that stretch, they get that witnessing. If you're too cozy and comfortable, you just do what you know. So it's all kind of it's all kind of mucky. But then what I wanted to impress, and I'll get to that question in a minute on the screen, what I wanted to impress, and that's why I put those two things at the beginning, because they're really big, and it was important to have sort of poetry or something for it, because that's a sort of it's a way human beings can express themselves, and it takes us a little out of an academic think. But there is a level of beauty thread running all the way through all of that tragedy. And, if you look at the last 200 years, the whole 200 years hasn't been just a tragedy. It's been lots and lots and lots of human beings living, trying to live well, running on programs, developing, ideation and cultural stuff. And a lot of it just went wrong. But the important desire was there. So where where do we go from here, for me, is the most important thing. We can watch it. We now decide what our community is going to be. And yes, we are doing that. What did someone say? Do you think the impact of the current pandemic would see further trauma experienced on a global scale? For what I'm saying, I'll come back to that. But I think, and I'd be really cautious about the kind of stuff we talk about here, because I don't want to go down those roads particularly. But what's happening at the moment is an opportunity for us to further advance our capacity to think about ourselves as a collective and who we are and how to witness it separately and make decisions. That's what a crisis does. So, where people are best is if they don't polarize, they come back out, they sit up here, and then they see what's happening and allow all points of view to be real. This is my perspective, so that because it's an opportunity to see past who we are. And then, there's a whole lot going on. So there's a lot of trauma happening. And so again, you have to pick that up and run with it. However, I don't want to overly focus on trauma, because that's sort of not what we're here for, although this unit, is in some respects. I think that's not all mammals. There are some very solitary mammals, apart from when raising babies. I can't think of one. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just can't think of one at the moment. And I know that you're right. So my brain's just trying to go there. And then said, I get very annoyed when I keep hearing that humans are social beings, not all of us. And if someone who has spent a great deal of time observing wildlife, I have seen that as well. Sure. There are always exceptions to everything. However, when you look at the physiology from a polyvagal perspective, we are wired to engage with our environment, and we are wired, if nothing else, it's like people go, well, you're born alone. And I go, no, you're not. You're born from a mother. You're not alone. You came out of a human being, and you were from a connection of human beings. That's wiring. So when I'm talking about this stuff, it's why I like the polyvagal theory, and I like it because it keeps it out of that social cultural understanding, or even that personal understanding in that way, where we're wired for that. And it doesn't mean that you like hanging out with people. And those little mammals would have, at least when they were little, needed nurture in order to get to a certain point before they could go and then decide who they wanted to be on their own. And so at an evolutionary, yes, the male elephants are solitary, only females and offspring are in herds, but they still require a herd. That male elephant still needs to come in and propagates, my best word for this morning, interact with those female elephants to make more elephants. So it's not what you do in your day. It's the fact that at a physiological level, we moved from reptiles at our vagal system, according to Porges, and it's a pretty good model, for basically only having a dorsal vagus, and we go into this more next module next week, where you didn't have a social engagement system. You didn't have a connection so that you have your ventral vagus and you have a capacity to choose what happens. So a reptile will just go boom and have to respond with the body. And it doesn't, to the best of our understanding, and it's probably much more interesting than this, at a social engagement level, it doesn't have the physiology to engage with a smile and how you're going with other reptiles. And so we are wired to be able to do that. And so we can argue about the sociology of how when I'm wired like that, it doesn't mean I want to hang out with people. Of course not. I'm really private. I don't hang out with people all the time. It's not, I like it. And then I have a lot of private time. I like doing this, and then I'll have to go and have a nice lie down. It's not about who you are as a person. We're going underneath all of that with this work. We're very, very used to thinking about the brain and how we interact with people and who we are, and thinking ourselves through this way. And what I'm asking you to do, and this is just the beginning of it, and I think you'll probably feel really differently by the end, is watching what's happening for the body at a really interstitial level. So when someone comes into my office, it isn't, but it's not of any relevance whether they're a social creature or not. In some respects, it's not of any relevance whether they've experienced high trauma from X, Y, Z. And I'll qualify that. What I'm interested in primarily, although the whole person I'm interested in, and I need to know who they are, and I need to be able to have their self-awareness and self-knowledge and meaning as part of the equation in this therapy, because they're there, and it's about them. But after that actually, for me, and permit me to be blunt, because it's actually just my best way of thinking and imparting my information. If you critique me with a sociological level, I'll fail probably, but it's really important to tease this out from the work. I'm interested in what's happening for their body right now, and not what they think about what's happening for their body. Once we've got past all of that, we put it to one side and we go, okay, fine. Where can we start? What can you do? Can you put your foot on this ball? Given you understand what I'm even talking about, because I've already showed you, whatever. Can you put your foot on this ball and push? What happens to your body in that situation? Does it get anxious? Does it not mind? Does it like it? What can we go from here? What can it tolerate? And so we clean the area of all of this stuff. And that's what I mean by, I want this module done first. If that isn't done well, we don't have a clean space to work in. But we're making a clean space. You clean yourself so that you do not come in with implicit bias, and you are open and easy with the person in a very, very natural way. And that is all. And then you can accommodate how they might be feeling about, and this is why I wanted you to do this module, prior therapy sessions that were horrible. Prior therapy sessions that weren't horrible, but still undermined the human being enormously. Prior therapy sessions where you had to jump how high, do 50 sit-ups that made absolutely no meaning to you whatsoever. Prior therapy sessions where you had to talk about your feelings and you didn't know how, and you couldn't, and you failed. All of those things come from this history module, or this appreciation of a way of thinking and being that misses the delicacy of the system. The system can't do a whole lot of that stuff because it's under duress. Why it's under duress is of less relevance to me, because I can't fix all of that stuff. And I can go down all the rabbit holes of why you might be like this, but let's, and I do this with trauma a lot, and the work works well enough to provide this, which is, let's get your body into a better place. When we get your body into a better place, what does it feel like? Can you sustain that? Because it's yours. And it doesn't matter what your therapist thinks. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. You get to have an experience of yourself just because. And I think that's the birthright of every human being. And so I don't dismiss other therapies and the use of them. And, I will refer people on if there's high order trauma levels that I can't, because the story needs to be untied. The story needs to be played with. I can do it, but other people do it better. But I do this really well because I don't think we talk about this enough. And we don't even understand what it can provide people. And we get so, especially when you're in a heightened state, and most people are all the time, and we're taught that being busy is essential. When you actually come down into a state of quiet in your body and get to feel whatever that actually is for you, and not think and feel, but just processing what it feels like to be in your body. And it gets to be, if you can, and everyone's different, my head feels clearer. My eyes are different. I can see more clearly. I've got peripheral vision. My hearing's shifted. oh, well, I can punch a punching bag or bounce a ball and it's really effortless and my body works well. You know, that's a really nice thing to offer people. And so I think it's plenty, because from there, at a physiological level, and we are not used to thinking like this, our whole nervous system resets. It changes. It's so tight in a safety mode from whatever reason. And if I get focused on the reason, I don't get to this bit, which is the bit I want to do. The safety knit is so tight. And if you're talking about autism, ADHD, intellectual disability from birth, you know, the basic premise is it's from birth. The system has been in a constricted state, and so a lot of these things are not as accessible. That's the point. You know, and I might be wrong, and Porges might be wrong, and that's okay, and debunk it till the cows come home, go for it. But I've worked with enough people now, and I see the changes when you can change that physiology from that tightly constricted state to a softening, just because, not because someone wants you to be nice, and not because you can then go out and do XYZ in the world, and not so you can smile better at people, because that offends me enormously, but just because you can feel better, then it's plenty. And we don't understand that because we're so overly inculcated to focus and achieve. We are so overly focused on, as a therapist and as a parent, our kid achieving. And so the whole thrust of it always just has this overemphasis on, I'm scared you're not going to be okay and we have to make it happen. And in the middle, the person gets lost. They get lost in the middle. So I hope that as we go through, you'll really know what I mean. It's only a 6-week course, but I've tried really hard to put as much information in as I can, so that what I'm saying today is very understood by you by the end, because we don't know how to think like this. When you talk to psychiatrists, they don't know how to think like this. When you talk to doctors, they don't know how to think like this. They've been, you know, and love doctors, love psychiatrists. I'm not ever knocking anyone. What I'm knocking is our cultural paradigms and way of seeing that have been so mechanistic for so long that we miss the nuance of the nervous system. We miss the nuance of how much the nervous system influences the state of the brain, influences the capacity of the brain, influences the capacity of the social engagement system, just because. So it's not about whether you, it's never for me about whether you are a good social creature or not. I hope that when you come and see me, you like being alone even more. And you get more out of it and you feel really nice about it. I don't expect you to turn into a social creature. You know, that's not the point. You know, we're just so out of thinking all of the time. But there's a lot of people say, and this is interesting too, there's a lot of argument about, you know, the vagus nerve and whether we're more dorsal vagal or ventral vagal. And, you know, if you've read some of my stuff, you'll see where I sit with that. And other people will argue, get cross with me for my dorsal vagal articles, which are on my website, because they're saying, well, I can use my ventral vagus, and how dare you say I can't use my ventral vagus, and I'm fine, and I do like people, and I do like interacting with people just on my own terms. And I'm like, absolutely. It's not ever one or the other. When you take it at a physiological level, you can't tease apart what's going on in the body. If you've seen, I think I've put a picture in, I hope I have. If I haven't, tell me and I'll put it in, of the cranial nerves and what they look like in the head. It's a mess in there. It's a big mess. And so it's anyone's business what's happening. And we've got a model here which is never anything close to what's actually happening in the body. You know, you can understand how a computer works and maybe understand all this stuff, but it's still got information running through it and doing its own thing. And then we're not a computer. We're a quantum being with all of this stuff wishing around in us, helping us operate. And so it's not about the outer. It's about, how are you? What do you need? Can I help you? Does your body feel better when it's like this? And now that it does, what do you want to go and do? Go and have a nice day. I don't care. I love hearing the stories, because people really love to come back and go, this and this and this and this and this happened. He's been doing this and this and this. Or the person will say, oh, I can do this now, and my head stayed clear for the last 4 weeks, and I'm really surprised. You know, so you're enabling a better functioning system. You're upgrading the system at a systems level. And because, and this is what this module is good for, because we're so used to overseeing that and clamping on it and putting a behavioral model on top of it and telling, you know, we're so used to owning people in therapy and in parenthood, especially if you've seemed to have a disability or seem to be this or that. We're so used to managing people. And this therapy is the opposite of that. It just is. Let me just read this. I've got a couple of messages, not just for parents either, even for the self. Yes, to know what it's going on, to feel safe, feels like, and not to have the vocab to even ask for help, assuming there's anyone to ask, and then to experience this practice and suddenly feel everything. And that's not to feel terrifying. That's wild. Oh, who wrote that? Oh, yeah, I thought so. Fee. Fee and I have done some work together. Yeah, it's a whole new land. It's a whole new land, because instead you're not, and it's very hard to say what this is until you've experienced it in some respects. If you've always been in a system that's constricted, you know yourself like that. Your eyes and your ears operate in a certain way, and your bandwidth is this much, whatever that is. That's not good or bad. It's just, that's what you get to be. And so that's who you think you are. And then when we soften the system and allow it to chat more, integrate more, feel safer, whatever the words that work, but operate better, there's an experience of self that changes. The self goes, oh, my head's clearer. I mean, there's a video, excuse me, on my YouTube channel with Nick with the bald head, and lots of you may have seen it, but she sat up gasping in this workshop, like in shock, gasping, catching her breath, could barely breathe, not because she was upset and not she was traumatized, but she went, I can feel my tummy and it doesn't hurt. And she's 40. She went, she was really spun out for the whole afternoon. She had to really catch up, because she had such a different experience of her body, and it didn't hurt. And it had never hurt. And she'd done yoga and psychotherapy and blah, 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 like a million things. Really, really smart human being, really lovely human being. But nothing had made that different in that, just that thing of being able to feel her tummy differently. And then that gave her a whole new appreciation of herself, a whole new appreciation of her body. And then she went, oh, my head's clear. And she was really spun out, because her head didn't have white noise in it all of the time, you know, which is a very ADHD thing. It wasn't busy. And so she had to accommodate that. And so, you know, with Fee saying suddenly to feel everything, and that's not to feel terrifying, it's wild. It is. It is a bit of a wild ride. And in that, I, you know, impress you with this all of the time, and I will as we go, you have to go really gently with people. I'm quite bullish about this, because that's what can happen. You're taking someone out of an experience into another experience, and you don't know, unless you're really thoughtful and gentle and kind and slow and have a sophistication with this, what that's going to do to someone to take them into that space. How are they going to cope? If they've got a trauma background, that can be mind-blowingly not helpful. So, you know, I think I have people take my exercises out of context, and then they go and run workshops on autism and stuff, and they have groups of people and they get them all to do this, and, you know, it's not smart, you know. And I've had people come back and go, I went to this workshop and they did this, and I've been feeling really funny ever since, and, you know, is it my fault? because that's what people are used to doing, is going, that's my fault, I didn't do this right. And I went, I don't think they did that well enough, and I don't think they actually knew what they were doing. So this course is delicate. It's going to give you heaps of information, and it's going to be really delicate because we're playing with something that looks really simple, and it isn't. It's wild. But we have to learn to play in there, and we have to go really gently. And the person, Nick, this person I was talking about, although she had that experience, it was a 3-day workshop. She had also had a 2-week experience with Danny Rady in Thailand, an Asperger experts course, learning about this and working with my book. And she had a therapist that knew the polyvagal theory. So she had a lot of foundation with which to understand all of this, and that held her very well in this experience. But what happened in the workshop and why she jumped is because there was a point where I was talking and going through the material, and she went, "Do you mean that's all it is?" And it suddenly clicked for her that a lot of who she is, and this is where, I can get into lots of trouble with the autism sort of scene, and I'm sorry, but it's more complex. She went, "Is that all it is?" And you could see her just go click, 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 because then her body was in a place where it would go there. It provided safety for her. She understood it. And then it was very fast. But she had all of this other context at a very, very high order level to fundamentally have that process. So when she was in that really quite overwhelmed state, it didn't blow her out of the water. And then she just had to catch up. And I just made sure we caught up a couple of weeks later via Zoom, and to make sure she was okay and it had settled in okay and it lasted. And she was like, "Yeah, fine. Yeah, it's all still happening. No, I don't need to see you anymore. I don't need to do any other work. I'm good." And then was very generous and made me a video. But I'm not sure where I am now, but it's a lot. How's that? I'm sure some doctors do. Yes, I will overgeneralize. There's someone saying, "I'm sure doctors do understand things aren't mechanical." Of course. I will overgeneralize all the time, because otherwise, if I have to qualify everything I say all of the time, I'll just fall over myself. So I'll apologize for doing that as we go. Generally, they don't. It's new. And even if they do, and this is the thing about implicit bias, you still, as a doctor, all of your training hasn't. So you actually, for a doctor, have to come in and reinform yourself at every point in order to understand this. And I have a lovely mum at the moment who's a pediatrician who may be watching, and this work confounds her a little because it's weird. It doesn't quite do what we're supposed to understand. It's coming in from a different angle. And so we think we know a lot, and we do know a lot, and it's what this whole module's for. But what we're doing now is going somewhere new. And it's why I love this mum, and it's why I love all the mums and people that come and see me, is they're willing to open to a new possibility. And autism is driving that, because the therapies are not suffice at this point in time for most people. They're willing to just open and see what else we've got, what else we can have, where else we can go. And so this module, this theory of Porges, allows us to open doors we haven't seen before. It allows me to then take my wild and wacky brain and go play around in it and find ways to work that enhance that at that level, and then try and explain it so that it's understood in a new, we have to make a new framework. People will debunk the polyvagal theory and argue, but it's like, it's a pretty good model for starters, on the whole, it actually really, really works. So yes, of course, lots of doctors do. But we all got something to learn. I've never felt safe Fee, so I hear what you're saying. Yeah, a lot of people don't feel safe. A lot of people. My body now tells me what it wants, not all the time, and I don't always hear it clearly or understand what it's asking for. We're basically growing a new relationship and working out whether the mind or body needs are most important in that moment. It's like a whole relational navigation, like any of them. See, what we're building is a new relationship with the body. We're taught to dominate it. We're taught not to listen to it. We get very cross if it doesn't do what we want, of course. And we'll go over this next week again. But with the polyvagal theory, it's going here to keep you safe. It's going here to keep you safe. And so it's trying really hard, and it does it because it thinks you can't handle what's going on. And it had to take over, especially with the immobilized thing. It's like you've got a little hairline trigger and it gets triggered and it goes slip, and then you haven't got your control again, or you always have to live there, and it doesn't know how to get out of that because it doesn't trust you. This is language that just will work more as we go along. We're building a relationship in a sense, so the body goes, oh, you know what, you got this, it's okay. And it will let go and soften and shift into a different state. And that's where we're playing. It's really hard to try and describe it, but that's where we're playing. And that's where I get all of this amazing change. And it's not because I'm amazing. I'm not amazing, but it's not because it's magic. It's because that bit there that Porges has allowed us to see, he didn't make it. He's not God. It's just he's allowed us to see it. And then he's allowed us to play in there. When we get that switch right, all sorts of other things can happen. And you have access to yourself in a totally different way. And it's, it feels like magic, but being in a body is magic. And so a few people are saying, I can only imagine what it is like not to hurt, and me too. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. And I think what I mind the most and what I'm excited about the most is that truth has never been relevant in our therapies. It spins me out. You look back at this module we've just done. It hasn't been incorporated. It's like, oh, whatever, this is part of autism. It's like, no, that's huge. It's so relevant. I found a paper recently, and I've written a paper in response to it, and I'm hoping to get it published soon, and it's a case study, so I'm really excited. But this paper was No Way Out of Autistic Inertia. It's in New Frontiers of Psychology. And it's excellent because it's a case study of I can't remember how many, but it's a qualitative case study on people talking about what's going on in their bodies and how it doesn't work properly. And it's, they're then going, there's this huge aspect of neuropathy or catatonia. And that's just a game changer that's in this really big publication, because we're starting to talk about what's going in the body at different levels for people on the spectrum. And then what does that mean? And we get to start exploring it. So, from a polyvagal perspective, what it means is the body's stuck in a really immobilized state. And a immobilization with fear state is really hardcore. And you don't have access to a lot of stuff. And we'll see what this is next week and the week after. But I've written a paper called Towards a Way Out of Autistic Inertia. And it's really cool. And it's academic, not like today. So I'm quite excited about it. But we're rugby tackling in all sorts of ways from all over the world this new understanding and this new paradigm. So, and it's not to fix it, it's to make people have a better time in their body while they're here. Alrighty. How do you get the sense for internal resources people have as to not go too quickly? We'll go into this more and more as we go, but I just start really slow. I will talk first and see where they're at, and then take a lot of information in, and trying to articulate that's kind of hard, as Anne-Marie will know, who's I'm looking at right now, who's one of my trainee therapists. trying to articulate that's kind of, I don't know, maybe easier for some people than others, but it's a very gentle process of seeing where the person's at on any day, what they can accommodate at a cognitive social level, and then you've got still no idea what they can manage with the exercises. So you show them the exercise and you see their response to that. Then you get them to put, if it's useful, it's a push me, pull you, very gentle, no, we'll go into this properly later. You go really slow and you ask a little and you step back. You go really slow, ask a little and you step back and you see what the person can accommodate. And then you playing in the body getting more robust. So the nervous system will go, I don't like that. And then because you haven't asked a lot of it, it goes, oh, that's okay, I can come back on. And then they get used to that. And then you just leave them alone. So the session might not last for a really long time because all you wanted was that. And then it goes, oh, this is pretty good actually. And it's a little change, but it's a little change that then has big implications in the outside world. So I'll have people who come and put their feet on the ball, asleep for 2 sessions. Third session, because I've managed to make them feel safe at a cognitive, etc. level. Feet on the ball, push for 5 pushes, stop, freaks them out enough, but not freaks them out. And then the mum sends me an email, and this boy that I'm talking about was 17. The mum will send me an email and go, it's really weird, he's just taken a pizza out of the oven and cut it with a knife and is usually too scared of heating knives. And so we don't have to say it was from my work, but it probably was because nothing else was different in that week. And all we did was this tiny little thing where his ventral vagal, his vagus system, got to just think a little differently at a really interstitial level. And that's, for some people that makes sense today, and for other people it will make sense in a few more weeks. Let me just going down. Wendy, speaking for myself, yes, the body understands it. It's a knowing which comes from the body, not my cognition. It's like knowing you can trust that knowing without any sense of doubt. Very hard to explain. Like someone pulled back a veil and now everything is clear when you were never really where it was even foggy. It's that. And it's, so much of this is about perception and awareness, but we forget that our perception is allowed by our physical state. We don't understand that well enough. And because we don't understand it well enough and we don't appreciate it well enough, you have no idea what's going on for the other person and what their operating system is like. So all we've managed to do with our clumsy therapies, no offense to everybody, but they, basing clumsy everything, is go pathology, fix it kind of thing. And I'm overgeneralizing, so forgive me a lot. But when you shift the state of the body, the perception shifts at a physiological level. If your eyes have always been fixed in front of you, more or less, and the brightness and lightness and contrast has all been down quite low because you've been stuck in an immobilized state, you don't know what the difference is. And how do you explain this to someone when you get them out and those cranial nerves come back online? So I have kids, kids especially, you'll do a little tiny bit of work and you'll have done absolutely nothing in like proper terms. And then they'll go outside and like stare at a tree for ages and ages and then just have to go downstairs and look at the tree. And I think because they can't explain it because they've just been living in this operating system and then it's different. I think they can see more color. I think they can see the movement of the trees. That kid will then drive all the way home, which is one 9-year-old I'm thinking about, and notice all the signs in the street on the way home and articulate this to the parents. And she can see more. And it's that. And how do you even measure that really in real time with that kid? Because it doesn't actually matter whether you've measured it. It matters whether she's got it. And she's never the same again because now the world looks different. It's huge. So we're playing in there all of the time. And that is like lifting a veil. but it illuminates just how much the body influences our capacity to engage in the world. And it, you know, that's where we're playing. And so we have to be really respectful of the sanctity of that. It's, you know, it's really subtle work, and it's, you know, safety is a huge aspect of it, but there's something about the sanctity of working in this space that's needs to illuminate the practice. It's not a matter of, oh, just go whack your feet on that ball and push for a bit and close your eyes and you'll be fine, which is what we usually, you know, how we usually like to think. This is going to cut out in a few minutes. We're nearly at 8 o'clock. So I'm just saying that, and I don't mind if it cuts out. Mike, I don't know if there's any logistical anything we need to say, but so I'm going to say thank you. Actually, I'm going to round it off because we're going to cut off. I will catch up next week. Anything I haven't addressed, send me another message and I will get to it. I'll try during the week to find some time to reply as well if I need to, and I have replied in Thinkific to some people and put in new links. I'm also doing that in Facebook, so there's 2 ways you can kind of glean stuff. I'm delighted you're all here, and it's just so nice to be able to start to share this and really explore it in some depth, so thank you. And I'll say that, and then just my brain's going back and forth. Visual Sun, on day 1 with Holly in July, walked out of the session and noticed, I don't know, I can't read that now, the fact that there was an incline to where we had parked. That. So that's where we're playing. So, you know, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the people in the UK for being awake. And I hope this is a really good course for you. I'm going to go and find some breakfast, and I'll see you all again really soon.